Oh, Ethan.
Good afternoon. Welcome to
Oh,
the
look
Miami
at that.
Sports Break.
Well, I'm
Showing up
blocked.
right on cue is Ethan. Oh, let me
I'm
get that
blocked
out
by
of
the
here, boss.
logo. Hold on.
Yeah,
Hold on.
right.
I'm
Hold
blocked.
on.
There
No,
we go.
that's branding right there. Literal branding. There
There
we
you go.
go. We'll make that better. So, what's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to the Miami Sports Break. On super short notice, we have Ethan Skolnick joining Jaccare Gibbons and I with a rundown on everything going on. A lot actually to talk about in Miami sports. It's been a pretty crazy week. Everybody's running around, including us. So, wanted to bring Ethan on and kind of
Oh,
get everybody up to speed on what's going
all
on.
right, we
So,
good. We back.
we're just gonna wing it today and just break it down for you real quick. So, Ethan, can you just give us the lowdown on kind of where the Heat are at with the roster
Yeah.
situation and who's in, who's out?
Yeah, I reported today on OnsideRadio.com that it's going to be a little longer for some of these guys. I was told last night not to expect a lot of them back on Saturday. I don't have the exact names in terms of who's going to be back and who's not. I have a general idea. I will tell you that Heat fans are not going to be happy about it because we are talking about some core guys that may not be back for a little while, but it's not a great situation. I mean, there's obviously not a lot of consistency in terms of the way the league is dealing with these things. It seems like if you don't have enough players available, you get lucky. If you have just enough players available, then you have to go out and get slaughtered. That seems to be the way this goes because it was going to be that the Heat were going to play the shorthanded Celtics, and Heat fans were rejoicing that they're going to get an easy win. And they don't play that game, but then they end up playing the 2 against Philadelphia because they had 8. I mean, if one guy is, I had Ira Winder in my show. If one guy has food poisoning, you get out of playing the game. But instead, they played the game, and they're down to 8 players. So unless the Tyler Hero back spasms are serious enough, the Heat may be in a position where they're going to have to play again Saturday against Detroit. And these were 2 pretty easily winnable games that now get thrown into flux because you don't have enough NBA players on your roster. So it's best. But I don't think some of these guys are going to be back for a little while,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I
If they
want to.
might, go ahead, John.
I want to think about the positive part. Like, do you think that this is actually helping guys in the NBA, the ones who are like, low roster guys, 13, 14 man off the bench? Like, is it helping them? Like, in terms of like, for instance, we got to see Gabe Vincent the other night have an explosive game. So, do you feel like this is helping guys, or you just rather play with a full roster?
Well, it's the preseason, right? I mean, basically, that's what it is. This is an extended preseason. Like, the preseason hasn't ended yet for some of these teams. And I just think that it's, kind of unfortunate, that we're in this position that, you have to kind of work out the kinks on the fly. You don't have a full rotation. I mean, is it good for a guy like Gabe Vincent to get some minutes, even Chris Silva to get a little confidence after, maybe he becomes useful to you in short minutes later in the year? Yeah, some of that stuff is positive, but also, you've got a season where you're 4-6. You had, like I said, 2 easily winnable games coming up here against Detroit. You got 2 against Toronto after that. The Raptors are not playing well. So you could have really racked up some wins here, got a little bit of confidence, felt better about yourself. Maybe you're 8-6 then at that point. Maybe you split one of those 2 games against Philadelphia, so you could have been 9-5. That looks a lot different from 4-6. And, are we going to drop one of these games to Detroit? And that's problematic. So, yeah, I mean, the other guys get minutes, but I can tell you that Eric Spoelstra, particularly in a 72-game season where you don't even know if they're going to get to 72, would prefer to have his full complement of players and kind of figure out the other stuff in practice.
And what's very frustrating, I think, is it's not a level playing field. There's no blueprint for this, and the situations all seem to be handled differently from the league. And some players are available, some are not. And it's just very frustrating to see Miami come out in the first game against Philadelphia, really play a hard game. The effort was there. They had a chance to win it, but they just didn't have enough. And then to come back and run it back 2 nights against the Philadelphia team that subsequently replenished a little bit, it's really seeming like that the scales aren't balanced within the NBA, and it's kind of like the antithesis of how they handled it in the bubble, to where everything kind of seemed to work, but now it's a free for all again, and they seem to have regressed early in the season. So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, they have, but they felt like they really weren't given a choice by their players. They wanted to do bubbles again, and the players didn't want to do bubbles, and so they got something they wanted, which was to start the season for their TV partners. Let's be honest, that's what this is about. For the money for the TV partners, they just wanted to start their season prior to Christmas. The players did not. The players wanted to start it this Monday. The players wanted to start it on MLK Day. That was what LeBron and some of the other players wanted. They did not want that. But the compromise solution was, okay, but we're not having, players were like, the players didn't get what they want, but the players did get what they want, which they didn't want bubbles. They didn't want regional bubbles. They didn't want a single bubble. They didn't want to be in there. There was some talk about, 20 games in a bubble, like splitting up 3 different sites, like Vegas, Orlando, Chicago, putting 10 teams in each site, playing 20 games. After the 20 games, then essentially, you take a 2-week break, you spend some time with your family, and you come back. I don't know how they would have policed that either, because you go back home with your family and you get exposed to COVID, you bring it back to the bubble, and they would have to test again. But they did a great job last year, but I don't know what they thought was going to happen. This is more like what happened with MLB. And it was predictable, and it was predictable enough that at least they did create this time in the second half of the year to fill in some dates. So they haven't released those schedules yet. But again, are they going to get the right 8 teams in the playoffs? I don't think it matters the seeding as much, particularly if the playoffs end up in a bubble. Then the seeding really won't matter at all, right? Yeah. Or won't matter for home court. But I just think it's a matter of, are you going to get the right 8 teams? I think if they look at the East right now, they'll say, okay, who's the top of the East? Philadelphia, Boston, Milwaukee, Indiana. Okay, I mean, those 4 teams were supposed to be competitive, contending teams this year. Toronto's fallen off, but that could have happened anyway, and they're playing in Tampa. They've been more disadvantaged than anybody, right? And then the Nets, obviously, that's been an interesting story so far, but they're not that far out of it. And then the Heat. I think they look at it like eventually they're going to get to the right 8 teams. The records may not look like they should look. The seedings, the pairings might not look. But also, our guy Brady Hawk made a good point. It may not matter if you're the 7th seed, if there's no home court, but also the 2 seed might not be a team that's really deserving of being a 2 seed. So you might end up in the 7th seed and get a matchup against, say, an Indiana anyway, which maybe you would have gotten in a real season if you were the 3 and they were the 6. So I just, it's all over the place. You just win as many games as you can. That's it.
Yeah, but it doesn't, like, to me, it doesn't matter regardless, because I don't think they're going to have fans. I think we're going to be in the bubble for the playoffs, so I don't think it's going to matter. And every team's on a level playing field regardless. That's why in the bubble you're seeing so many explosive games from these players, because they're just hooping. It ain't no pressure, no expectations. It's just you out there playing. My only concern is now, like, with Miami at this point, those guys are adding value to their stock, like the Gabe Vincent in the trade talk. Do you see Miami trading for Bradley Beal, or do you see any kind of trades happening for Miami?
I mean, he's got to ask out. I mean, they're not going to trade for him unless he asks out. So, as far as his situation, that's the situation. There's always going to be another guy who wants out. To me, the most likely scenarios for the Heat are try to get a starting 4 somewhere. Maybe it's a PJ Tucker. Maybe it's a John Collins. One of those type of players. If you're looking at a backcourt player at this point, I think with the way that Hero's developed, and Hero has developed, I talked about this on my show today, he's got a lot of unfair criticism because people are comparing him to Harden. But if you just look at last year to this year, per 36 minutes, he's better in pretty much every category but 3-point shooting, which will come. That's the last thing I'm worried about with him. He's better in every category than he was in the regular season last year and than he was in the playoffs in the bubble. So for all the talk about how good he was in the playoffs in the bubble, he's been better per 36 minutes. I'm not just talking about more volume, but per 36 minutes than he was in the bubble and per 100 possessions. So he's been better. I don't know they necessarily need to do anything there. The one guy I do think could squeak through here, we talked about this a little before, is Kyle Lowry. I just think you look at Toronto's situation.
I think they're going to go into a rebuild.
The rebuild, he's in the last year of his deal, making $30 million. I think it would have been really hard for them to part with him if they were playing in Toronto right now, because he's beloved in Toronto, but they're not in Toronto. They haven't been in Toronto since March, okay? In terms of playing. This, if you're ever going to trade Kyle Lowry, this is the time to do it. I think the Heat could look at putting together a package of expirings. Maybe you try to keep Precious off the table, but you give him Okpala, some pick swaps, Kendrick Nunn to try to rehabilitate him, right? You plug Gabe Vincent in the Nunn slot, and then you go from there. And maybe that's enough to get Kyle Lowry out of Toronto if they're not going to get anything for him at the end of the season.
I do think in the offseason that Miami should, and I've expressed this on the show many times, that Miami should explore Lonzo Ball. I think he'll be a perfect fit for Miami. I think Tyler Hero just was getting criticism because he was handling the ball too much. But I would like to see Hero coming more off screens and picks. And Miami hasn't had a true point guard since I don't think we ever really had one in the last
Jimmy
2
Hardaway.
years.
I mean, I know. I mean, Jason Williams
White
maybe
chocolate,
one
yeah.
year. Really. I mean, to be honest, during the big 3 years, I mean, and I'm a Rio guy, but during the big 3 years, Dwayne Wade and LeBron James were their point guards. So, yeah. I mean, it's not the way they've typically played. I mean, Pat obviously is from, he started that way with Magic, and then went to New York and had Derek Harper and had Doc Rivers and had Greg Anthony, more traditional points, and then he went out and got Hardaway, here to settle things. But really, since Tim, they haven't had. I mean, Rio was not a traditional point. He was never a high assist guy. He was kind of off the ball. Norris Cole never really developed into that. I mean, they've never really had it. I mean, Jay Will is kind of the one guy. And when Jay Will came to Curry, they pretty much took a lot of the point guard stuff out of his game. They in fact, he got too conservative, which was weird because he was white chocolate and playing that fast.
They wouldn't let him mix like he was mixing and nothing like that. But the reason why I say Lonzo Ball would be a great fit in Miami, just because one, he provides you with that length at the defensive end. He's a great defender already, and I just think Miami needs that. I think with the guys that they're trying to develop with Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, he plays well off the ball. Bam and him in the pick and roll kind of can do some different things. And plus, you're going to always have the shooter if you keep Duncan Robinson. How much better would it be if you had a guy who was setting up the offense, Bam screening for them coming off the pick and pops, like off-ball screening, getting Jimmy Butler more involved with cutting down to the basket. So I just think it'll open up the offense a lot more if they had a guy who can get them 10 assists instead of taking the ball, because I think it takes a lot out of Jimmy Butler and Bam handling the ball so much, and then on top of that, they're defending the best two players on the opposite team.
Right, and Goran is not a traditional point either. That's the thing. I mean, Goran is he can set up other guys. Obviously, he's got much better as a lob passer. He's an above average passer, but he's not. Goran is about finding his own offense really and creating a burst, and so they haven't really had that guy. He's an interesting name. He'd like him. I know that. I think one of the questions with New Orleans, now that you've got Stan there along with Griff, two guys I know very well, they do value having length at the point guard position. I know that, Stan really didn't have it with Jameer in Orlando, but he kind of inherited Jameer. But typically he likes having length at that spot. So they may value him more. But again, it comes down to fit in New Orleans with some of the other players they have. And they've got Bledsoe, and so I mean, there's not a lot of shooting in the backcourt when they play the two of them together.
And also they got the young kid that had the explosive game the other night, Alexander Walker,
right?
Who's valuable at the point guard position. So Lonzo Ball is hurt, so you never know how that goes.
I just want to see Pat deal with LeVar. That's all. That'll be fun.
That'll be classic TV. Hey, Ethan, one more question. Everybody's been talking about it. Victor Oladipo, where are we at with that?
Well, we don't know if Vic wants to be in Houston. I will just say this: he doesn't make a ton of sense for Houston. If you look at what they did in that trade, they valued the picks. They valued the pick swaps. They got 4 pick swaps. They got 4 first-round picks. Some of those players are in 6th grade right now. It doesn't really fit with the Wall Oladipo timeline, but at the same time, they've got Cousins on kind of a rehab contract. They gave some money to Christian Wood, which looks like money well spent. But again, he's a younger player too. I don't know if Oladipo makes sense if they're not planning to pay him. Do you really want to max out Victor Oladipo if you're in Houston's situation, right? You're not going to be a top 4 team in the East for a while. Does it make sense to pay Vic? If not, I know the Heat have had interest. I know that interest cooled because they didn't like the way he handled himself at the end of last year, particularly against them. They were not impressed with all of his kissing ass to them. It didn't go over well. It didn't go over well with their best players. I can tell you that. Jimmy wasn't a big fan of it. So I don't know that he was prioritized by the Heat, but I can tell you this. See, if he's gotten his body back in shape, which appears he has, okay, he obviously is a plus defender when he's healthy. He can be.
We lost you there.
I'll be right back. He can be a plus shooter. And here's the thing. If you can get him for cheap, then why not roll the dice on it, right? That makes more sense. So I think there's a real possibility that they could make a run at him. what would the package entail? Would it just be picks and none? And like obviously you need filler. So Iguodala, Olynyk, one of them may need to go out at the very least. That's a possibility. But I think it's something to watch. I think they think that they could put Vic with Hero in the backcourt, and they would get two guys who can handle a little bit and also score. And I think that's kind of what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, you could kind of see the situation and take advantage of the Houston roster and where he fits in the long-term plans of it, and maybe get him at a little bit of a lower price than it would cost you in a different situation. So definitely something to consider. And I wanted to just ask you real quick, I know the last couple of games kind of put Precious into the spotlight a little bit. What did you see with him against Embiid, and what you liked? Obviously, with him and Hero seemed to have a good chemistry, sort of doing the same things that Gordon and Bam were doing a little bit in the offense. Yeah. So what do you see from him? I know it's very early, obviously, but what are your early indications on him and how he's kind of developed within the offense?
I love him. I mean, you take a look at what he's done so far. 20th pick. He's first in rookies in field goal percentage. He's third in rebounding. He's fifth in win shares. He really hasn't looked out of place at any time. He seems to really grasp concepts quickly. Like, he doesn't look out of place on offense or defense, and he plays with a motor. I mean, you have a guy who plays with intelligence and a motor, who has, the requisite size to play the position, you've got something. Now, to me, the next step is playing him with Bam. And that's why you got to get Bam back. I think once they start to play him with Bam, I think a lot of the questions about this team will disappear, because maybe you have the starting four on your team on your roster, particularly if Bam becomes more comfortable shooting from the outside. I kind of feel like Kelly's a placeholder for Precious right now. I know that people thought that maybe Kelly was a placeholder for KZ. I feel like they think that at least Precious has a defined skill set that is plug and play. As much as they like KZ, and I still think they like KZ, KZ is a developmental project. I mean, he has a lot of elements to his game, but a lot of them are refinement. Right.
I think he's 2 years. I think he's like another year away before.
But how long has that been already?
Well, I mean, this is his second year, but remember, David, he was hurt last year. He came out of camp. He had the Achilles problem. He went to the G League. He was supposed to come back to the team and get reps. Then he wasn't really available in the bubble. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, this is – and remember, he's never had a summer league. First year, he couldn't play in the summer league because the way that they acquired him, he wasn't available to play until July 6th. And by then they decided summer league had already started. They didn't want to plug him in there. And then there's no summer league this year. So ordinarily, KZ would have had 2 full training camps, 2 summer leagues. Hasn't had any of that. Now you say, well, how has Precious been able to do it? Because, again, Precious is a defined skill set. It's just go hard. That's all they're asking him to do. Go hard, get up, play above the rim. And then on defense, we want you to switch. We want you to be aggressive, get in guys' faces. And he's done that beautifully. So now it's like, okay, is there another level here? I think that next level is when he's playing with an elite big next to him, which has not really happened yet. And then you see what he does. But I think they hit the jackpot with him. I think he's a great pick.
He has a good feel, too. I noticed his instincts are very good. Like, just little things. Like, obviously, Duncan had the ball, and it just a little slip to the basket, and he got a foul. He drew a foul. Just little stuff. He has a high basketball IQ already, it seems. And like you say, it doesn't look out of place on the offense, which is something that, was a little bit of an uncertain. You knew he was going to give you the defense, the energy, the rebounding, but I really like his mid-range game and kind of those different things he's bringing, going to the basket and attacking as well. So I'm really pleased that he's gotten a chance to show those things the last couple of games with everything else going on, and the team's playing hard. So hopefully the deck kind of reshuffles in the second half of the season to give the Heat a little bit more of a fair shake. But, the Miami Heat are the last team that's going to complain about. They're just going to put their heads down and just keep going. Yeah, we have enough, and we really don't care about the situation. So just a lot to kind of keep an eye on and just hope for the best in the next week and 10 days with who's going to be out, and just kind of roll the dice from there.
Maybe longer than that for some. Just warning you guys. That's all.
All right. Well, you heard it here second or third. So definitely appreciate you taking some time to jump on with us today. And what else we got going on here, guys? I know there's a lot with the Dolphins and Hurricanes. You want to stay on for a few, Ethan? You got to bounce?
I got to run, but bring me back. Bring me back. We'll do another one. We'll do that. And you know what? We'll get you guys on Odside too, so we can do this. We can do this together. We're gonna get you guys. You guys can come to the studio. But yeah, absolutely, you guys are doing a great job with this thing. And everybody subscribe. That's the key thing. Subscribe so you get the updates on this whenever you guys are gone. But thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. We're gonna stay for a few and switch gears a little bit to the Miami Dolphins. the latest on the offensive coordinator search. It continues. I know we've got some differing opinions throughout the network on who they should go after, but there's been some developments today in that search. It looks like Mike McDaniel is probably going to stay put in San Francisco. He's going to get promoted to the offensive coordinator position there. So that kind of narrows it down to two candidates. It looks like Matt Canada with Pittsburgh, and then you've got Jaccare's guy, Pep Hamilton. So we're going to talk about a couple different candidates here.
He's not my guy. The only thing is, I will say this. CK was alluding that he rode the coattails of a good quarterback. What offensive coordinator do you know in the league is not successful with a good quarterback? So I kind of refuted that point. I think Pep Hamilton would be a good fit. He's a good quarterbacks coach. He's coached Andrew Luck. Justin Herbert had a good season under him. So I just think he's a good guy to have on your staff. I like Matt Canada. I think Canada does a lot of motion, a lot of good things with his receivers. And I think that he would be a great fit because, if I'm not mistaken, Canada was at Pittsburgh, like the college.
Yeah, he set records
he
there too. He had some really good offenses there.
And
yeah, he was at.
They use a lot of motion, a lot of deceptiveness. Also, another thing to mention: some of these guys in the offensive coordinator search are just the guys who are not in the playoffs currently. So some of those guys have probably been interviewed that they can't release their names until after the playoffs is over. So that's another thing you guys can continue to look out for.
Yeah, and Pep Hamilton's obviously known about his he's known for his relationships with quarterbacks, whether his development, obviously, with Justin Herbert having a great season with the Chargers. He obviously has some influence there. I mean, let's not discount the effect of good coaching on players, but elite talent will usually trump coaching in those senses. Like Justin Herbert was probably going to be good anyway, but I think Pep Hamilton maybe doesn't get a fair shake league-wide because he's been put into some good situations. So I'd be curious to see how he comes in and fits with Tua. That would definitely be something to look out for because everybody thought Adam Gase was going to have a good relationship with Tannehill. So that didn't work out, but these situations are different.
I understand that, but I just think that you have to if Adam Gase can get a second chance as a head coach, and he was terrible, and he's going to get a job as an offensive coordinator somewhere, terrible. He rode the coattails of Peyton Manning to a job. Why this is not the same aspect? Pep Hamilton deserves a shot. Matt Canada deserves a shot. I just want the guy who's going to be in place that's going to benefit Tua the most. I don't know who that is. I like Matt Canada, and Mike McDaniels probably was the best fit just because of the offense that he runs. And
very run heavy though, McDaniel. You think that was? I mean, obviously he likes the receivers that give you a lot of yak and stuff like that.
But he comes from the Shanahan tree. They run the football.
Yeah. No, they're going to try to, pound you down for sure. And they would definitely bring out the most in whatever running backs are going to have, obviously, in the Miami Dolphins backfield. But regardless who they get, obviously, I think it's going to be a big change from the Chan Gailey one-year experiment here in Miami. Obviously, Gailey was a placeholder. He wasn't in the long-term cards, just like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Those two are kind of married in this situation. You take one out of the equation, now it's pretty defined that Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to be the backup again, and that's just kind of how it is. So you've got to look at the future and who's going to bring the most out of not only Tua, but your offense as a whole. And I like what Matt Canada's done at the college ranks. I think he's an innovator. He gets a lot of production. He's very diverse. He can run the football. His schemes are very quarterback friendly as well. So either or, I think Miami is going to have an upgrade at the offense, particularly with a year for Tua to develop in the offseason. And with hopefully some playmakers added to the team in the draft, I think the offensive coordinator, all that's got to fit together. So it's a lot of moving parts. And like you said, there's some candidates in the playoffs as well that are interesting to keep an eye on. So
I really think the Saints, a person from the Saints tree would benefit him more than all the rest of those guys. But Matt Canada is a great choice. And if they do get him, I don't think Miami's going to be in a rush per se to, hire someone. I think they're going to take their time. Let's just see how it shakes out. But I think Miami's in a good position. Obviously, they need to upgrade the offense in general, but they just need to find somebody who fits to his set. Roll in the pocket, move in the pocket, RPO game, give him nice rhythm throws, things that he can push down the field because he throws the football, accurate football. So just giving them a chance. Also seeing what they do with Devontae Parker. An article came out the other day, obviously, that the guy from the Herald wrote. I don't
Yeah.
speak
We
of
won't
his
say his
name
name. That guy.
because
Yeah,
he's
we don't speak his name around
So
here.
it was comments in there saying Tua is nothing special about him. The only thing stands out about him is the accuracy. So my point was to refute this, and I really would challenge those players, and they can come on the show, and I'll challenge them then, or I'll challenge them on Twitter. What Tua has at quarterback, you can't teach. You can't teach accuracy. You can't teach anticipation. You can't teach the guts and the savvy that this kid has. And he's a winner. I don't care what nobody says. The kid wins. At every level he's won, he's made his teams better. To say, oh, it's nothing special about his arm. If you like Joe Burrow, there's nothing special about that kid's arm at all. Tua has a
He's
better arm
accurate.
than
He's
him.
cerebral.
Yeah,
He's a
he
winner.
moxie. So, and this is what I
Moxie, the
could,
moxie word. I knew
yeah.
that was gonna.
This is
It's
what it's
true.
gonna come down to, and this is the reality of the situation. Would you guys rather have Tom Brady or would you rather have an Aaron Rodgers? And it comes down if people say Aaron Rodgers, that means you like the guy who's fancy. He's the best. He's the
Justin
best.
Herbert.
He's the best thrower of the football I've ever seen in my life. He's the best quarterback I've ever seen in my life. But how many Super Bowls does he have?
Mm-hmm. And I think you made a good point as well in one of our threads that it's a different NFL dynamic versus a college dynamic. In a college locker room, I mean, you can attest to this better than anybody. They're a little tighter. I mean, it's all ball. Basically, it's school and ball. That's what you're doing in college. Whereas
Well,
professional athletes, they got wives and kids and
yeah.
other stuff
So
going on. They're not as tight.
yeah,
It is what it is.
college, you're more tighter because it's kind of like a differential in talent. Like like you're a walk-on guy and a scholarship guy. Sometimes the talent is here. Now, there's some walk-ons who are there, and the scholarship players here. But pretty much y'all all have the same common goal. You guys are trying to make it to the NFL, or you guys have become good friends because you're living together, something like that. And the camaraderie is here. So it's no egos. When you get to the NFL, the egos become because now I have a brand. Now I have a wife and kids that I may have to feed, or you don't have the same level of trust in your coach that you may have like in the NFL. You don't have the same level because it's really a business. Like
And
in
more
college,
turnover too.
yeah,
You kind
like
of you come in with a class, and a lot of those guys
yeah,
stay through.
in college, if you get recruited to the Alabamas, the Clemson of the world, Ohio State, you pretty much know your coach is going to be there for the whole duration of the time you be there, unless he's going to take a job somewhere else. But these guys, you create a relationship. I'm getting recruited by these coaches, so it's the trust level. So in the NFL, these guys develop opinions that favor them. So if Devontae Parker or Gesicki said this, it favors them because why? Ryan Fitzpatrick got them the ball last season. He benefits them. Tua doesn't do that. Tua's not going to force the ball downfield. Tom Brady became the best quarterback and the GOAT because he took what the
Check
defense
down.
gave him. Hey, you want to double cover Gronkowski? No problem. I'll hit James White or Burkhead or Kevin Fall. I'll hit him out the backfield. They go pick up 10 yards and we just driving downfield, just punishing you. It's okay. I know everybody likes the glamour and joy of the quarterback rolling, throwing 30 yards across his body for 60. The big arm guys. But, hey, you'll take Drew Brees' career. You'll take Tom Brady's career. Those guys are not the most talented quarterbacks, but they're winners.
Yeah, and CK, Chris Kaufman made a great point, like of the paradigm shift. How about the quarterbacks, like the Brady's and the Breezes, the guys that didn't impress you with the physical side of it, transitioning now to the Mahomes and the Murrays and the Justin Herberts, the eye candy, the beautiful arm, the big athletic 6'5", can throw the ball 80 yards, standing still. Those guys. So it's kind of a shifting narrative on what's good with a quarterback. And Tua is sort of caught in the middle. He's kind of a hybrid. He doesn't blow you away
he's
physically.
athletic. He's
He
athletic,
is.
though. He's very athletic. The guy was
And he
recruited
had
as a
major
dual.
hip surgery,
Yes,
which
he was.
power comes from your lower body when you're throwing the football. The arm is only part of it, obviously. You got to generate power from the lower half of your
The
body to be
kid,
able to throw the
listen,
ball.
I love Tua. Obviously, the only quarterback I'll take over him right now is Deshaun Watson. Obviously, if that's the deal, of course you make that deal. But I love Tua. I think he's a gamer. I think the kid is ready. Like, these kids haven't been pressed into this position. This man has been pressed as a freshman to come in a national title game on the
Mm-hmm.
biggest stage of a career, and he comes in there and win the game for you. The guy has it. Get him some weapons, and then we can judge from that. If he's not good at that point, then we move on. That's
Yeah,
it. You
exactly.
move
That's
on.
it. So
I do.
last, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I do want to talk about the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I was gonna say last thing we're gonna hit on here is a little bit of kind of same old with the Miami Hurricanes. They made some good changes, I guess, in terms of realigning people's roles and stuff like that, but it's kind of confusing exactly what the Miami Hurricanes are doing. So we want to break that down a little bit. Obviously, Manny Diaz, I think a big thing is taking over the play calling on defense, which is going to hopefully bring back some of that explosiveness on that
No.
side of the ball, the turnovers, but I,
So
I think I
I'm
think he's
gonna
going to
go
struggle
ahead.
a little
I'm
bit with
finna.
everything.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna let you know, Manny Diaz is gonna get fired at the end of the season because this team's gonna underachieve. That's one. Manny Diaz doesn't have any nuts as a coach. Like, why are you keeping Blake Baker? What are we doing here? What is the
Well, they
point
brought
of
back
keeping?
Jeff Simpson. I don't know exactly what, assistant head coach, defensive line coach, and DVD is now cornerbacks coach, which means he can travel and recruit. So I think that's a good thing. But the whole Manny Diaz Blake Baker dynamic, it's
Yeah,
I think the hammer had to
he's
fall,
got.
man.
Yeah, he's got. Like I said, he's living it down with his guys. But I'll tell you, I'm saying, he's going to get fired at the end of the season. This guy's already not that great of a head coach. Not that great of a head coach. If we're being honest, he's not that great of a head coach. He's okay. He improved from year one to year two, obviously, but you don't fire. You don't get rid of the problems. Last season, you made a whole overhaul of the offense.
Yep.
You're supposed to do the same thing with the defense. You went and got T-Rob, which is a great hire. Why not hire him as a DC? It's hard for a coach to do both. People think
Mm-hmm.
about it. No. There's only a couple of coaches from the NFL to college ranks who call plays.
It's not much, yeah. And I just think he's just overextending himself again, and he's already struggling at the head coach position. I think. I mean,
He's gonna
listen, I'm
get.
not going to be the one that's going to say he's going to get fired at the end of the season, but I agree with you. I see a regression there, obviously, with the Derek King injury. That's a big uncertainty for next season, and just there's so much going on in the coaching staff, and I just don't think.
Did Miami get better as a team? Yes, they did. But with this team that's coming back, their expectations is gonna be 11 wins.
Which is
College
ridiculous.
college
I don't know what
football
you see from this
playoffs.
team to be 11 wins.
No,
I just
that's
don't.
gonna be their expectation. You have a quarterback returning. You had a lot of key guys come back to school. Guys took that extra year eligibility. A strong recruiting class coming in. This is what's going to be. A lot of guys from the transfer portal coming in. You still got two guys out there, Stevenson and the linebacker from USC. I can't pronounce I can't pronounce or remember his name. Palado or something like that. He's a Hawaiian guy. He went to Bishop Gorman with Bubba Bolden them. So I think those two guys are probably going to commit to Miami. That's going to bring expectations in. So I just don't see Miami winning those 11 games. I think they're going to underachieve. They're starting off with a hard game against Alabama,
But
which
they're 0-1. I mean, they're if
I'm
they
not gonna
lose
say
by,
that. I'm not gonna say they're 0-1. You got to
they're
give them
not
a
going to beat
chance.
Alabama. I don't think they're going to beat
You still
Alabama.
have to get them
Listen,
a chance. You got to give them a
sure.
chance.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're going to have a chance. I mean, they're they're elite college athletes as well, but I just don't think they can compete. We saw what Alabama can do. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be negative on the
Like
Hurricanes,
I
but I
said,
just think they lack
I
a
don't
plan.
see it's gonna be the same thing that happened at Texas this past year with Tom Herman. What the story was? Oh, Sam Ellinger coming back for a senior year. Texas gonna have this. They started preseason ranked number 9 or 8 in the country, moved up to about I think 6 or something or 7. They got beat the first game of the year against
Mhm.
TCU. Then it was just a downhill roll after that. Miami
Yep.
doesn't like. First of all, Manny Diaz is too nice. He's keeping guys he shouldn't. You have to fire these guys. Blake Baker should have been gone. The last 2 games of the year, your defense got exposed. It was ugly.
99 points, right?
Yeah, and they haven't been good since. They haven't been good since he's taken over. Now you're gonna go back to calling plays. You can't manage the game and be a defensive coordinator. Why? Because you have to be there when the offense is on the field making adjustments. Not making adjustments, I'm sorry. You have to be there to make those crucial calls in the game, but your view is skewed because you're the defensive coordinator. Oh, well, hey, I'm the defensive coordinator. I think we can get stops. You're going to have to be making adjustments. It's hard to double down as a coach. It's easier when you're being an offensive coordinator because the defense has to adjust to what you're doing. So you can go out there and scribble up some plays and it works. And those guys who are calling plays are elite offensive players. I mean, elite offensive coaches. Ryan Day is an elite offensive coach. Lincoln Riley, elite offensive coach. Tom Herman to
Sark. I mean, obviously he's not at
Sark,
Alabama anymore, but look at what he
Tom
did.
Herman to an extent was an elite offensive coach. But you see how he struggled at Texas. When you read that, when you have expectations, things change. So we're gonna see what Manny Diaz does. But in my humble opinion, Miami's gonna be they're gonna underachieve this season. Derek King coming off the ACL tear. I could be wrong, but I guarantee you that he's gonna get fired. They're gonna go get another coach to come in, and they're gonna win with those guys. They're gonna win with his guys he recruited. They're gonna win national titles with them.
That's the problem. I mean, the players have been there, and you see it obviously when the Hurricanes go to the NFL level. These guys start balling out where they underperformed in college. So I think it's on the coaching staff to develop players. I think that's been lacking the last couple of years, and they've kind of just taken the base talent of the players and they've gotten that out of it rather than having those guys really take that jump to start to close the gaps with the Clemsons of the world in the ACC, because Miami isn't even in the second tier in the ACC right now. I think they're in the third tier. They're not better than North Carolina. Obviously, they got hammered by North Carolina. They're a better team than Miami. Miami's in that third, fourth, fifth ACC rank right now.
Yeah, they're gonna
have. I'm being nice.
They have a tough schedule coming out. Has Miami gotten better? Yes, no doubt. They gotten better players, better staff, but
the players are better. The coaching is not better.
No, the only the best
except for
coaches, Lashley, T. Rob's a good coach. Simpson's a good coach, but the Baker, I don't understand how you don't make that higher. You go get T. Rob from South Carolina. They always had good defensive backs, and their defense was solid. You make that transition. You be the defensive coordinator, not you trying to keep him with the job title and calling plays. No, man, that's not going to work.
And they put DVD in charge of the whole secondary instead of just the cornerbacks, maybe.
Yeah.
Because he can coach and he can recruit. So that's probably my favorite move of what they did. And I like bringing back Jess Simpson as well. You saw the defense from 2 years ago for Miami when he was here previously was an elite defense. So maybe he takes some of that weight off of Manny Diaz. But I just think that there's a lot of ambiguity in kind of the structure on the defensive coaching staff, which might lead to some problems as the season goes on, guys being out of position, stuff like that. But we'll see if hopefully these guys are, smart coaches and they figure it out.
Like I said, people gonna say I'm harsh or whatever, but hey, listen, it's the truth. The guy has not been that great of a head coach. Now you're gonna put yourself a duty of being a head coach and a defensive coordinator. Nah, man. Nick Saban, who's probably a guru, Bill Belichick, who's a guru on defense, never has done that. Name me out of the 32 NFL jobs and however many jobs it is in the NCAA, name me coaches that are doing it. You're only going to probably get 5% of all of that. Because in the NFL, you got Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay as the three coaches who call their own offense that I know off the top of my head.
Correct? Yeah, because Reed was doing it for a while, but he stopped a long time.
And Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah. So that's 4. All right. Then in college, you got Ryan Day, Lincoln Riley, Gus Malzahn was calling his own offense. That's 7 that you can name off the top of your head. And if it's more, please let me know because I could be wrong. But I know the percentage is not going to be higher than 20% of those guys calling plays. Yeah, and all those guys I named have one thing in common, and what's that? They're defensive
minds. Yep. Yeah, so I think the defense is a whole different ball of wax. But we're going to wrap up the show today. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. I know it was a little bit of a longer show today than usual, but obviously want to thank Ethan as well for jumping on and kind of bringing us up to speed on what's going on with the Heat. And Jaccare and I will be back on Tuesday, and keep a lookout. We're going to have some special guests coming up here in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. And make sure to follow us on our Instagram page at MI